Well, here I am in DC. Welcome, Lisa, to our Leaders Who
Thank
Care
you.
series.
Thank you, Mark. It's great to be here. I'm
Yeah.
in Houston, Texas today.
All right, Houston, Texas. Cowboy hat and cowboy boots and the whole bit.
Giddy
Um,
up,
Giddy up. You sound like Kramer on Seinfeld. Giddy up.
giddy up.
You got a lot going on, so I want to hit it. And first of all, congrats on your exciting new opportunity. We'll talk about that. First, could you briefly introduce yourself? Where you're from, where you're at, your family, maybe something you've never told anybody else in the world, and this is where you want to reveal it, something like that.
Absolutely. We play this game, Two Truths and a Lie, at work sometimes to open up. So I'll think if there's something I haven't revealed yet. So my name is Lisa Neuberger Fernandez, and I'm the 374 Waters newest head of sustainability and ecosystems. I was born in New York City. And I grew up in Paris, France, and Houston, Texas, where I'm sitting here today. And I'm in Houston today because I wanted to see my parents on my way back to Spain. And we're having a book signing event with friends from high school and some of my parents' friends. So that's exciting. So
It is.
we can
Just
get on
talk
to
about
that.
it. Yeah.
I'm a mom. You asked me about myself. I'm a mom of a teenager. She just turned 15 this week. Very exciting. And I'm married to a Spaniard from the Basque Country in Spain. And I've lived my life kind of peripatetic life. I've lived in many different places, and I love adventure and moving to new places and kind of building community in those new places and connecting in the new community to this global network, and that's part of our lives around the world. So that's something that's not unknown, but that's what I'm going to offer here right now.
That's pretty cool. And 15, you said your daughter. Is that what you said?
Yeah, she just turned 15. It's really interesting. She's currently studying abroad, and she's doing a semester abroad in France, and is loving it. And she just got home last night, and my husband said that she came back with a really positive attitude, and we're just so proud of her, and so glad that we're able to grow up a young woman in a way that she is resilient and adaptable and ready for changes. And she's the kind of person where you can drop her into a new school, and that's happened to her several times in the last 15 years, and she can navigate it, and I think that's fantastic.
It is fantastic. And the more exposure young people get like that, the better. I know I have three boys and a daughter-in-law. I think I like the daughter-in-law even more than the three boys. But
We don't take sides.
no, we don't. There's lots of love to go around, and my two younger sons have been in acting and everything, and back and forth to Montreal, where I'm from, and you can tell the difference in their ability to be dropped in also in places like that. And having just come, like I said, I'm here in DC for the National Women's History Museum, which is honoring women who've done great things. So
Wow.
good for you with your daughter to empower
Thank
her
you.
like that. That's so you can say félicitations à elle.
Merci beaucoup.
Elle parle français maintenant aussi ou non?
Ah oui, oui, elle parle un peu, parle mieux l'espagnol.
Okay, yo debo practicar mi español, but not right now though. So what were you like talking about John? What were you like as a kid or a teenager? Were you playing music or sports? Were you a reader? Were you writing stories? What did you do?
Great question. So a couple things that come to mind. I loved reading books, and one of my favorite books was the Choose Your Own Adventure series. Did you read Choose Your Own Adventure books?
No.
These books are so imaginative, and they've really been like a metaphor for me for guiding careers and guiding our life. So the way the Choose Your Own Adventure book works is that the reader writes the story. So at every couple of pages, you have a choice. Like, you're on a desert island. Do you start to swim, or do you go inland and light a fire? And if you pick choice A, you move to this page. Choice B, you move to this page. And so you create your own story. And I think that's a great metaphor for life. And how do we take the steering wheel of our own lives in these really fast changing times, and and be the author of our own narrative. As a kid, I was really into sports. In high school in Houston, I played sports. I played field hockey and soccer. I was always left wing, so kind of on the one side, and on the offense. So that's something that I love to do. And one other interesting thing, I just saw my middle school business partner yesterday for lunch here. When we were in middle school, we started a business, and it was a party business, and it was called like the Bears and the Bunnies or something like that. I don't know. We had these little business cards that we made a stamp and we put them. And this business was, so I started being an entrepreneur very early, probably 12, 13 years old, something like that. And we found a way to make money by organizing children's birthday parties. So, our friends, my parents' friends and Stuart's parents' friends had a lot of friends with little kids. So we would go around, we'd interview the kids, like, what are you interested in? You like, Marvel comics. Okay, well, we can make a Marvel birthday party. And, we would do everything start to finish, and we would run it, which, took a real load off for the parents. But that was my first experience with entrepreneurship.
That's too cool. So you were starting your own adventure really early there and making decisions really, really early, which is awesome. And then tell us a little bit. I want to tell us a little bit about your journey. I mean, you started, it was Paris and Houston. I mean, talk about culture change, Paris and Houston. And then education-wise, you had a combo of history and French and Wharton MBA and Fletcher School at Tufts, which is for international affairs. Unbelievable to prepare leaders there. Speaking of leaders who care, what intrigued you to have those dual majors? And it must have been pretty exciting, the type of students and people you saw and engaged with.
Yeah, I've always been interested in learning about new people and in finding, asking a lot of questions. And I think that curiosity really started when we moved to Paris when I was 4 years old. And it continues to this day. My role in groups has always been some kind of a connector, like a bridge. And one of those bridge building times was when I was in graduate school, and I was concurrently studying at the Wharton Business School, as you said, and also at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy in Boston. And I was doing my own kind of shuttle diplomacy back and forth between these two campuses and between two really different oriented groups of students. And I learned a lot about diplomacy during that experience, because I realized that I was misinterpreted by both groups simultaneously. So when you're at Wharton Business School and also pursuing a degree in policy issues, at Wharton, I was seen as a very kind of, let's say, liberal, left-wing liberal kind of a person, like, bleeding heart liberal, something like that. But then when I'm in Fletcher and people are coming from all over the world, from all types of kind of policy backgrounds and on the ground humanitarian activities, and I was going back to Wharton Business School, there I was seen as quite a conservative person. And, I was neither necessarily one nor the other, but I learned how to be able to bridge between both communities and how to translate between different types of people, between different types of interests. And that experience really has stood me well, in the business world, where I'm working across sectors and really see the value of working across sectors, as a result of that.
Yeah, that is incredible. And then an education that you didn't necessarily expect would happen, but happened. And it's interesting how the same person is viewed so differently by different people. So you could probably put on a training course at Congress, actually.
Yeah, perhaps. But I really learned at a young age. For example, when I did a gap year between high school and college, and I studied abroad in France and lived with some friends who I had made during high school, French friends. And that was the year that the first Gulf War started. And I remember feeling really strongly that Americans were being misunderstood in that situation. And it made me, for the first time, realize that whereas I had one view of what was going on in America and what our motivations were, in France, people had a different view. And yet I was trying to both understand and explain, these differences and kind of come to grips with that as a pretty young person. So that really gave me a sense of multiple perspectives. And that I think living abroad as a kid gives you a natural sense of resilience, but also of the multiple realities that are out there. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so glad to be able to have our daughter being studying abroad right now, because just doing that, just the act of doing that, you naturally learn about these multiple perspectives, multiple realities. Things are different. The same thing is viewed in multiple different ways. And so it's like a mind expanding thing to do that I think is one of the ways that you build resilience as a person and adaptability, is by going through experiences like that.
Yeah, that's brilliant. It should never be said that looking at this pen only means looking at it this way versus this way, and it's actually really eye-opening to maybe look around. I remember I don't do much yoga, but I remember doing a few yoga classes on the beach, and the instructor told us to put our back to the water, bend down and look through our legs at the ocean. And it's mind-blowing because your brain has no clue what's going on looking at the world upside down. But it was a stretching thing, but it was also an exercise in look at the difference as what this is. The ocean's the wrong place, the sky's the wrong place. So that is a great education. Well, then you ended up at Accenture, and I want to know, what was it like to work for one company? And I remember speaking to managing partners in Miami about Accenture when there was 280,000 people, and they said at that time they were having a hard time doing a Christmas party planning for it.
Yeah, sure.
Now there's like 400 or 500 things. I don't even know how many employees. So what was it like working for one company 20 years? And do you think your mission, well, what was your mission and how did that evolve over years?
Yeah, it's interesting. I joined Accenture in 1995, and at the time, the company was named Anderson Consulting.
Right.
And also, I believe that there were about 35,000 approximately people there. When I left about a year ago, there were at least 700,000 people. So I experienced a tremendous growth and tremendous change as the company went public and as the company evolved and grew in so many ways. When I joined Accenture, there was one kind of curious question that was animating my time at the company and that kept me there really for almost 25 years. And that question was about the role of business in society. What is the role of business? What is that positive role that business can play? And how does that really work? And I got interested in that specific question because in high school and college, I worked at a series of G7 summits for the US government and for the US media. And I was very interested in what was going on in those summits. And I was wondering, where was the private sector and what was the role of the private sector? And I was noticing different policy issues being pushed by different governments. And I was wondering, how would this be different, or what would the success rate be if business was more involved? And so that question animated my time. And I spent the first 10 years in Accenture as a strategy consultant, and then the next 14 plus years in our corporate sustainability team. We call it the corporate citizenship team, as the head of strategy and innovation for that team. And the whole time I was with the company, I was launching a series of social innovation initiatives, or environmental innovation initiatives, if you want to call it that way, that would essentially channel the resources of the private sector into society in all different kinds of ways. And these things took many different shapes and forms, everything from creating a nonprofit consulting firm called New Sector Alliance that we spun out of the company in around the year 2001. Another thing was creating a social return on investment patented model called public service value that was used as the anchor for training governments around the world on how to drive outcomes cost effectively. We wrote a book, we created a think tank, got me very interested in thought leadership activities. And then in 2007, I got interested in sustainability. And that sustainability wave is what kind of has animated my career ever since then, and even all the way to where I work now at 374 Water. And what got me interested in sustainability was actually very personal. I was newlywed. I was interested in having kids, and I became kind of mildly obsessed with toxins at home and what to do about household products and these types of things. So I asked my friend and my most knowledgeable friend on this topic, a sustainability leader in the Bay Area. That's where I was living at the time, and with my husband. And she said, well, here's a list of household products to, to buy or not to buy or things like that. But really the big question for you is, would you like to enter Accenture into the Net Impact Green Challenge? So, fast forward 6 months later, we won first prize in that competition after measuring Accenture's greenhouse gas emissions in the United States for the first time. At that time, that was a kind of early in the sustainability arc for consulting firms. And then, fast forward 15 years, I've been working in this field ever since, and really trying to help us, kind of drink our own champagne. If we're trying to promote sustainability with clients, how do we do that as a company, and at my current company? So that's kind of the bit of the journey.
Well, it's lucky you decided to have a kid. You never might have gone into the toxins or anything like that.
Exactly. And the interesting thing about toxins is that the company that I'm working for now actually is bringing to market a new technology, an advanced technology that can destroy toxins and kind of eliminate them from wastewater and waste. So really taking this whole interest in toxins completely full circle.
So you're gonna have to write a book called The Toxin Story.
Yeah, my experience with toxins.
Exactly. So
how toxins changed my life.
There you go. And my kid and toxins changed my life, or something like that. So we actually founded Fifth Element on the basis that leaders in their businesses will do much better always when they're doing good. So like you talked about, it was around the mid 2000s, I think, you started getting involved in public service value type projects, and doing good as a required result. Did you find that Accenture were kind of ahead of everybody in that intention?
Well, I wouldn't say that we were ahead. I would say that in terms of sustainability, how sustainability issues have rippled through the private sector, that you can see waves go sector by sector. So the first sectors that were really faced with issues around environmental sustainability were those sectors that were most polluting, heavy industry, et cetera. And it took a while for these issues to reach professional services firms, whether it's law firms or consulting firms. And so we were, not the first type of company to hit the mark on sustainability, but within the professional services community, there were many firsts that Accenture did have. Like, for example, if I'm not mistaken, I think we were one of the first professional services firms to create a science-based target several years back, and that was an activity that really took the heart and soul of so many people across the company. And I still remember the day when our then CEO, Pierre Nanterre, approved that we would release this, and that we would set this and release this and all these kinds of things. So there were many milestones on that journey.
Was water ever in the picture with Accenture, or was there a specific experience that you thought may have led you to where you are now?
Yeah, great question. So the way I got connected to 374 Water was because about 18 months ago, we were creating this innovation challenge, sustainability innovation challenge, and it was covering many different topics. So one of the topics was about the future of net positive water. And we created brain trusts for each of the topics. And in the brain trust, we would have cross-sector leaders on the front lines of dealing with that specific issue. And so I was searching for a water entrepreneur, or an entrepreneur who was, really knowledgeable about the water sector, et cetera. And so a windy road, led me to contact Kobe Nagar, who's the CEO of 374 Water. And so our relationship was really built up through this competition, through this brain trust. And when that was over, I got him involved in this other initiative that was organized called the 17 Rooms by the Rockefeller Foundation and the Brookings Institute. And we came in and organized the room on Sustainable Development Goal number 6, which is all about water. And then this fall, when Kobe heard that I was looking for my next adventure, he said, look no further, take a look at my company. So he recruited me into his company after I had recruited him into this water challenge. So that's the water thread here. And
I love
one
it.
really amazing story about the water thread is that there was a specific woman named Renee who connected me to Kobe. And last week, when I was speaking at the United Nations for the UN Water Conference 2023, I was like walking around the room doing a facilitation, trying to make sure that everybody was speaking up. And I saw her in the audience, and I gave her this big hug, and we took a picture with Kobe and her and me. And I certainly would not have been standing at the United Nations last week speaking if it were not for this woman. And I had never met her in person before. This was a phone connection. So I have great thanks to her.
Well, we'll ask you about influencers a little bit later, but I was talking about it's amazing how we're all influencers, whether we know it or not, and it's a choice to be positive or negative. And she would be considered an influencer in your life for sure.
Absolutely.
Considering half our business is about the human element and executive search, you just told people how you don't even need a headhunter. You just get involved in a certain project and get to know people that are involved in that project, and then they come and hire you.
Exactly. I heard about a book about finding your next career written by a professor at INSEAD, and the punchline is follow your passion to get involved in activities that you're interested in, and that whole process will open up new doors that you wouldn't have anticipated specifically, but certainly once you get into that positive flow and you're energized and you're giving positive energy, you meet people, and one thing may lead to another.
Although I turned down my dream job way back when with a professional hockey team because I got an offer to be the executive director of a global leadership development nonprofit. And the only person that told me at a much reduced salary, I must add, and the only person that told me to take that position was the president of the hockey team, who told me, you may or may not be able to come back to hockey, but you're going to travel the world and meet leaders. You need to do that. And so it was pretty incredible, actually. Tell us how, in your new position, your opportunity, you're the global head of sustainability and ecosystems, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
You fit that on one business card?
Well, we like to shorten it sometimes, but all the words in there are really important to
I know.
me, at least. so I try to hold on to all of them. They all mean slightly different things.
Well, how does it address your core beliefs, especially, I think we may have talked about this, urgency that's going on right now, and that anybody can be a social innovator. And as you said before, the private sector definitely has to play a critical role.
Yes. So I do have this fundamental belief that anybody can be a social innovator, an environmental innovator, really a change maker. And in order to be a change maker, there's a couple of things that a person needs. So one are the skills in terms of being able to connect, to influence, to drive change, and the mindsets of optimism and grit and persistence, and the ability to stick with it even as things change or things seem hard, or maybe there's some disbelievers out there, and just the willingness to follow your vision all the way through and never give up. And the other thing that change makers need is a network, and the resources to connect. Now, as we've been describing, it's very possible. I believe that it's very possible to build these networks, yourself, and that's also one of these skills. But getting access to, to cross-sector folks who are pushing the same ideas makes a huge difference. And so we see great urgency out there in the world. If you look at things like the United Nations Sustainability Goals for 2030, you can read all kinds of things that says we're not quite on track to reach those. And even if we ever were on track, maybe COVID has set us back from that. There are many forces out there. Lots of things are happening. But if we're going to get back on track, I do fundamentally believe that this is only possible if we collaborate, if we work together, and we allow for these innovative, unusual partnerships and collaborations to come together. And it really takes a village, but it really takes people, individual people across all these different types of organizations, whether entrepreneurs, corporate, government, academic, science, the media, on and on. The list goes on and on. I'm leaving out a lot of different folks, but in order to drive this change.
Yeah, the one time I wanted to ask you also is We take on major initiatives too. We get retained by clients to do it, but we also co-founded one around food security and brought in Forbes on Tony Robbins, a bunch of people. And the goal was to hit 100 billion meals. We're up to
Wow.
60 billion now, but not more important, but equally important is a 10-year initiative to change the ecosystem. And water is a big part of food security. And to quote you guys, I think, is it's a new ecosystem platform powered by 374 Water for pioneers and practitioners, pushing the frontiers of clean water, energy, waste, and the circular economy to learn, innovate, and tackle global challenges together. That fits what we're talking about, changing the ecosystem of food for so many important reasons, including people.
Absolutely.
And so can you share your thoughts and excitement around truly making an economic, social, and environmental impact all at the same time?
Yeah, absolutely. So the beautiful tagline that you just read out so eloquently is the tagline describing our new platform called Sustainable Futures that we launched at the NASDAQ last week during UN Water Week. And this platform, we talk about tackling big challenges. So we decided to start with a really big one. And the first challenge we're mobilizing is around the future of PFAS and really reimagining the future of PFAS. PFAS is PFAS. It's this new terrible toxic chemical, synthetic chemical created by man that goes by the name also forever chemicals. They're very persistent in waste, in water. They won't degrade on their own, and they're quite pervasive in consumer products and also industrial products, that everything from like Teflon pans, Scotchgard, water resistant, stain resistant, all kinds of things. You can find them in carpeting and in pans and jackets. They're quite pervasive. So anyways, we've brought together a group of cross-sector leaders globally who are really on the front lines of working through this. And what we want to do with this call to action is to change the conversation from kind of fear and paralysis with the magnitude of this issue to optimism and hope and action, and a real sense that here are the solution pathways. Here are the areas where we need investment and innovation and focus for cross-sector leaders to really move the needle on this issue. Everything from curbing the production of the non-essential chemicals and products to cleaning up the mess. That's where a company like 374 Water comes in with remediation technologies that can actually dematerialize the toxins. So you start with toxic wastewater and you end up with clean water, minerals, and energy that's used to power the system. The other elements would be, how do we create alternative chemicals and products that don't use PFAS, but that have the same kind of performance value? And then how do we drive adoption, both consumer and industrial adoption of those products, because they may require different maintenance schedules or different behaviors. And typically in any kind of change process, it's that behavior part that's the most overlooked and also the most critical and the hardest to achieve.
Yeah, it's brilliant, and I'd love to talk to you more about getting into what we call the secretariat of key players to solve a lot of these issues and stuff. There's so much to do, and you're right, it's an urgency. Before I go to another question I want to ask you, tell us about your incredible book that's going to be launched and what it's about.
Oh, yes, thank you. So I happen to have a copy of the book right here. It's called Rebalance: How Women Lead, Parent, Partner, and Thrive. And I wrote this book during COVID with two of my girlfriends from DC. I lived in DC from 2010 to 2020. And when I moved there, I was eager to get promoted, let's say. And I came together with the two co-authors and a group of a dozen amazing moms, purpose-driven moms, professional moms who wanted to also move ahead in their careers. And we started this group we called it Thrive. And we met every first Friday of the month for 10 years. The group, of course, evolved and changed, but the two co-authors, we were in it from the beginning to the end. And the book is our our attempt to distill many of the lessons that came through all these amazing lunches, walk and talks, flash retreats, all these things. We realized that when you bring a group of like-minded people together who are kind of at a similar stage and with a similar orientation to their life, to their career, there's so much wisdom in that group that we didn't feel alone anymore. You know, in places like Washington, DC, a lot of us didn't have family members there, like parents or grandparents or aunts or uncles or anything like that. So we kind of form our own tribe, and we found so much wisdom among the women in this group and the families. And so the book is all about, you know, how have we tried to navigate through different stages in our lives with small and moving towards teenage kids, and trying to get ahead, you know, to that next stage in our careers and this type of thing.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about as a woman in tech, how you did actually navigate, you know, through getting on good initiatives, getting, you know, equal opportunity, just being in business. It was different eras that you've gone through, like I have, that has changed dramatically. How did you find that?
Yeah, so I feel like I'm in the generation that was really lucky. We were a generation where it was in my life, it was, you know, the doors were wide open to study anything that I wanted, to pursue any career that I wanted. I was fully supported by my parents, by my family, by my schools to pursue these things. And even though in business school, let's say women were maybe 30, 25, 30% of the class, these types of things, I never saw that. I never experienced that as an issue. I felt it was always a very inclusive situation. So, but in terms of the navigating, one maybe funny story is that many years before I made managing director, which was kind of the highest level of the hierarchy in my company, and I went to some events, like a women's event, and I received the book called Lean In. And at that time, I was a bit scared of that book, so I like immediately went and put it on the shelf, like I wasn't ready to deal with it. But then one day, several years later, I felt like I'm ready to push for a promotion. And you know, I studiously read the book and I took notes, and it really reads like a playbook on what to do, and it worked in my case, and I think it can work for others. You know, it's really simple things like sit at the table, have a voice, you know, speak up in a meeting, and ask for things, specific things like, you know, I'd like to get into this leadership development course, please, you know, can you help me with that? You know, I would actually like to be promoted. And I started to schedule meetings with kind of my boss and my boss's boss, called Path to MD. And this happened, you know, 4 or 5 times before we actually had a path to MD, and you know, and that ultimately happened. But there's really good lessons there, but you have to be ready for it. You know, big promotions most likely won't happen unless you're really asking for them, putting yourself forward, and these things are make a huge difference.
Yeah, I hear that a lot among women that I work with, and don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to ask, because they may not know, and they may say no, but don't be afraid to ask again, and type of thing. You know,
that's where the persistence comes in, because you probably need to ask multiple times and really be able to make the business case and the full case, and make it, you know, again and again, and really believe in yourself and believe in the chance that this could happen, and you know, find those people. The other thing that is always talked about is, you know, the mentor. Identify people who are going to help you on that path, and who you think have more power in whatever organizational structure you're in, who can help you.
Yeah, the mentors and the champions, which you're describing, that really support you, take it forward. That's awesome. It took a lot of courage and women pioneers, actually, even like yourself, to set that path. As advanced as we think we are or have been in the US, it wasn't that long ago that it was a lot different. So good for you for leading the way. That's why you're a leader who cares. That's the reason.
Leader who cares. Yeah. I mean, I was taking a walk with my mom this morning because I'm here with her, and we were talking about this book event coming up next and our podcast. And, you know, it does not go unnoticed to me that, you know, my grandmother was won the speech and debate championship of the United States in, you know, right before World War I, but World War II. But her speech and debate coach wasn't encouraging her to go on and have a career. She ended up creating her own small business when she was in her 50s. And so did my mom. She created her own small business when she was in her 50s. But it's a different era, and I've always been encouraged to move ahead by my grandmother, by my mother, and many other people.
Now we found out who a couple of your influencers are already. That's pretty good. Last question on this part. 2021, a client told me, and it was kind of brilliant at the time. He said, Mark, the year 2020 flew by slowly. And I thought, that's pretty crazy. But the last few years have kind of been weird. It feels like COVID was yesterday and so long ago at the same time. Can you share with us what you're most grateful for and also what you're most hopeful for?
Yeah, great question. The COVID experience for me was all about writing this book. Like we that with the authors, the co-authors, this was our COVID project. And we met every Saturday for an entire year to talk through and create and write the book. But in terms of what am I hopeful about, I'm hopeful that people will be kind of inspired to take this philosophy of positive change and action and realize that it's possible to kind of take the steering wheel of my life and my career and my family and do things even when things seem really out of whack. Like there's a lot of things in the world right now that kind of wake up and read the news and it's like, and that happened and then that happened. There's a lot of uncertainty and things really surprising things keep happening on a very regular basis. So my hope is that people will find that internal resilience, will put themselves and their teams and their families into spaces to build that resilience. And if we have that kind of resilience, both emotionally and skill wise and the mentality of being resilient and optimistic, that we'll be able to kind of navigate through these difficult times, and you see at the beginning of every century, probably there's kind of turbulence. And I think we're definitely feeling that right now.
Yeah, no, yeah, well said. And I'm just super grateful that you are a leader who cares, not to be cute, but that you actually are, and that you started that career in high school or middle school to see how to do it. So way to go. And hopeful that so many people in general, but a lot of women and young people are also getting engaged and sharing knowledge and bringing contributions to the table, that we need everybody to do it right now to get that urgency you're talking about. So way to go. We're cheering you on. And thank you for being on the Leaders Who Care series.
Thank you. You are one of my greatest cheerleaders on LinkedIn and in other forums. So thank you. Thank you, Mark. Thanks for having me. My pleasure.
I've never been called a cheerleader before, but what the hell? There you go. That's
good. The pom-poms. Yeah.